Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Collaborating Docs YouTube channel. I'm Amanda Guarniere, nurse practitioner and director of growth here at Collaborating Docs. And today I'm excited to interview Ben Forstie, founder of IV Drip Launch. And we are going to be talking all things IV therapy. So if this is a business that you are considering starting, or maybe a service that you're considering adding on to your current practice, I think you'll get some gems from our conversation. Ben, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to kind of kick it off and hear just a little intro about yourself and about your company, and then we'll kind of dive into some burning questions.
Cool. Yeah. No, thanks for having me, Amanda. Certainly great to be here talking about IV therapy. It's a great business to be in. So our company we work with people that are wanting to get into the business and those that are already going to grow their business. So it's crazy how much demand out there is right now, not only for IV therapies. We have two clinics in Arizona, super busy with those. But just the amount of people that want to get into the industry. So timing is really perfect. And that's kind of what we started this IV drip launch business for, is to help people really break into the business. So we work with nurses, nurse practitioners, PAs, doctors, just a whole assortment of different types of people that want to get into the business. So yeah, that's what we're here for.
Awesome. So it sounds like you really started more on the clinical side, and that's still ongoing. So you kind of have your own clinic that you run, and then kind of pivoted into educating others in addition. Is that correct?
So we started on the clinical side, and actually, interestingly enough, we got started in this right before COVID hit. So was that 4 years ago? Um, and we literally opened our clinic, and 2 weeks later, like COVID hit,
Oh,
and
wow.
everybody was freaked out, and we were freaked out. We're like, man, like nobody wants to come in, nobody wants to do anything, right? Everybody was super nervous. And so we actually started out, we also offered allergy and asthma at the time. And the local hospital in Northern Arizona, they called us and said, hey, we have all these patients coming in. Would you guys want to do the monoclonal antibody infusions? And we're like, yeah, I haven't heard of it, but sure, let's do it. So, well, I should say I haven't heard of it, but our doctors had heard of it. And my wife, she's a nurse practitioner, so she's like, sure. So we built an isolation room, and we started doing these antibody infusions, and we did hundreds of them. And we were hiring nurses, and we were doing it mobile, going into people's homes. And they kept changing and switching the medications. First it was Regeneron, and then it kept
Mhm.
changing, and then eventually they stopped it, which was really unfortunate. Like, I felt at the time, because we had such great success with these IVs. And but my wife's like, well, I really, I love the idea and the concept of doing these infusions. So we started offering Myers cocktails and things like that to boost immunity. So then that's kind of actually how we stumbled into IV therapy. And when we got into it, there was like, it's still pretty unregulated as a whole. But especially then, it was really unregulated. And we were like, okay, we want to make sure that we're doing everything safe. We want to make sure we're doing everything legally, and we don't want to, we want to make sure we have everything buttoned up on our end. So we actually hired a nurse practitioner who had had some experience in IV therapy, and the purpose to hire her was to come in and start writing protocols and just all these things that we needed. And so we spent, several months and thousands of dollars on developing all this type of thing. And long story short, now, when people sign up for our program, we have all that available, right? So, but really at the time there wasn't a lot of regulation, and we spent, the first year, just way too much time and way too much money. But at the time it was needed, right? We needed to make sure we're doing this safe and legally and everything else. So then I opened and started a Facebook group, and the purpose of that was to, so we could learn for our own clinic, so we could learn, what others are seeing out there. And it was pretty quick where we realized that, hey, there's a need for this. There's a lot of people that want to do it. want to make sure that everybody's operating legally and safely. So that's how Ivy Drip Launch was born, and so now here we are today. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that origin story. Very kind of unique path to
yeah,
get where you are. And I like that you mentioned that, you wanted to do things safely and legally and, that it can be kind of an unregulated specialty area. So, I want to know, as you're talking to folks who are getting started in this business, what are some of the most important steps to take at the beginning? Especially, hopefully those who want to get into this business also want to make sure that they're doing things in a compliant way. So what would be those kind of initial steps that you would recommend?
aside from legal compliance, I'd say our number one question actually is working with a medical director. So we work with nurses, mostly nurses and a lot of nurse practitioners, but in a lot of states, nurse practitioners also need a collaborating doc. So that's probably our number one thing. Is there's great options now. I know collaborating docs with what you guys are doing is fantastic, right? So nurse practitioners, you guys work with PAs too as well,
Yes,
right?
yes, we do.
So PAs, yeah. So nurse practitioners that come on board, it's like, hey, we have a collaborating doc that's perfect for you guys. So that's probably the number one question that we get. And so we work with people, and it was great actually bumping into you guys a while back and becoming an awesome referral for us, is because that was also a challenge in not even a couple years ago. Was there was some medical direction companies that kind of came and went. So from our end, as referring people to medical direction, it was for a little while there was a little bit gun shy, because there was some a medical direction company that came, and then they disappeared overnight, and they left hundreds and hundreds of people kind of stranded. So that was always a little bit scary for us, but now we have that area pretty much solidified. Like, we have 100% confidence in who we're referring people to for medical direction. And so that's why we're grateful we ran into you guys. But that's probably the biggest, I think, thing for me, is just to make sure that you're partnered with a good medical direction company, somebody that's going to support you and have your back and everything, and just making sure that you're compliant with everything, everything's running legally, and things like that. So that was what used to be a scary area, not only for us but people getting into this. Now, I feel like we have such great relationships,
Yeah.
that it's really a breeze. So people still call us and they're still nervous, but we can work with them and calm their fears and ease their minds that
Yeah.
we have great partnerships with people that we can turn you on to. So
Yeah, it's definitely
that would
helpful
be
to
my
have.
biggest yeah, that would be my biggest thing, is, if you're worried about medical direction and things like that, or medical collaboration, give us a call. We have great referrals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like, having a strong network is helpful. That way, if you want to get into this business, you have someone lined up for, the clinical education and also kind of the regulatory components, because those are really all things that someone needs to explore and learn as they're getting ready to open an IV therapy business. What's your take on mobile versus brick and mortar? Are you usually telling people like they need to have a space? Is it something where it's reasonable to start off as a mobile provider in some way and then kind of figure it out as you go? What's your stance there?
Great question. So I think there's a time and place for both, right? I think if people come to us and they want to start this business and keep their day job, right? They're a nurse practitioner or whatever, and they already have a good stable income, but they really want to dive into this world of entrepreneurship, and they want to have their own business, but they're still nervous. So in some cases, we'll recommend, like, hey, just start out mobile and start this on the side. And as you build it up, then you can start scaling back on your other job, right? Because you're getting paid well right now, and everything else. So don't, ruffle. But there's some people that are like, no, I'm all in. I want to just go for it. But so in those cases, I would say, get started with mobile. But I love hybrid. I love both. So like, we offer both. We have a brick and mortar And then we also offer mobile. We tend to see that the success rates are better with brick and mortar.
Mm,
I feel like you can get established. Location is going to be key, of course. If you're in a really good location, you can become established there. Like we see more success with that. But then also offering mobile, if you're able to, for bachelor parties and weekend events or evenings, especially when people are sick, they don't want to make the drive into the clinic, things like that. So really, it's unique to depending on who we're working with, but I always recommend both if
yeah.
possible.
Well, it sounds like someone could really make it fit with whatever their kind of goals are, whether they want to be,
Right.
like you said, someone part-time keeping their day job versus someone diving all in. And along those lines, like what are you seeing in terms of effective marketing? Is marketing a struggle for these businesses? Is it something where you really need to, put some dedicated time and effort into marketing? Does it sell itself? Like what are the trends in IV therapy marketing these days?
Um, it's a full-time job, really, for in most cases. So I think people tend to overlook it maybe more than they should. And it really depends on where you're at too. So like we have two clinics, one's in a smaller town in northern Arizona, and we've really grown with word of mouth, and just local referrals, working with other local practices, uh, family practice clinics, places like that, where we've built a strong referral network and then just word of mouth. But in Phoenix, in North Phoenix, it's a whole nother animal, right? It's a big city. There's millions of people, and there's just so much noise out there that trying to get the attention that we need for our clinic is we have to we have to be marketing, and it's also going to take some money to invest in marketing too. It's not enough anymore just to do organic marketing with social media and organic local SEO and things like that. That's going to be really great for you long term. But we always recommend to set aside some budget. It doesn't need to be a huge budget, but set aside some budget for marketing. And we teach, like in our program, we teach people how to, run ads and do all that on their own. Um, and then if they choose to use us, we'll run their ads for them. But really, our ultimate goal is to teach them how to do it on their own. And because then you're in control of what you're doing. We see a lot of ad agencies out there, and there's definitely a lot of good ones, but there's a lot that, maybe they have a ton of clients and you're kind of a number to them. So
Mhm.
I always encourage people to learn it as well as you can, even if you're not going to do it. So you have, the ammunition to at least know enough to know you can kind of oversee what they're doing for you, but definitely have some kind of budget for marketing is super critical. And I always say that one of the biggest or most effective marketing that we see is when the owners or providers, they themselves get behind the camera. So
Mhm.
especially moving into 2025 with just brand, I feel like it's super important for the to have a face to your brand, and people I just think it's super critical.
Yeah, no, those are great points. I agree with you that marketing is often overlooked. We help NPs and PAs who are starting all different types of specialty businesses and specialty practices, IV therapy being one of them. But kind of in all categories, we are usually pretty vocal about saying like, this isn't the field of dreams mentality of if you build it, they will come, right? Like, you do need to put time, effort, and often funds into marketing, whether it's, money that you've set aside to help with your launch. And then once you launch, like maybe you're spending 10% up to 20% of your monthly revenue goes right back into your marketing, and oftentimes it's money well spent, but to your point, you need to know how to use the tools,
Right.
and
Right.
not get not get swindled by someone who's going to promise you the moon, for
Right.
a lot of money, and then feel really bad if you don't recoup that, because we've heard those stories too. So yeah, I think That's great, great advice. Is this, you know, I'm thinking of the person who wants to start a practice. They want to have a physical presence, but also want to be as lean as possible, starting off. Um, what's kind of the minimum team that you need to start the business? Like, could an NP be the sole person? Do you always need nursing staff or reception? Like, what does that look like?
You can definitely be the sole person, right? So, and I'd say 80% of the people we work with start out solo, especially if they're starting it on the side and building this up. And it's not the most ideal way to do it, but in a lot of cases that's reality, right? They don't have the funds to go out and hire staff and nurses and things like that. But as the business grows, then I think just keeping an open mind and keeping that growth mindset, uh, you know, my uncle told me, he gave me great advice years ago when I got into business. He said, because I was talking to him about when he started his business, he's got a multi-million-dollar roofing company. And I said, man, like early on, you were by yourself and you must have been running crazy and just working like long hours. He's like, I made a rule to myself that start when I got started in business that when I start working 41 hours a week, I need to hire somebody for 1 hour. That might not that might not always be realistic, but just a good mindset to have that, as we work with people getting into IV therapy, especially if they're mobile and they start doing if they could do three infusions in an evening, but they're, solo, they can only do one, right? But there's always nurses that are looking for extra income as well. And that's going to be a great way to grow is to hire these nurses part-time just to start having them go out and do infusions. So there's just so many ways to grow it, but as long as you have the mindset that, how can I scale this and how can I grow with, as I'm growing, how can I build out my team? So
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I love that. When you work 41 hours, I like that. Um, I don't know if you have any success stories that you'd like to share about, an NP or PA that you worked with, or if you want to kind of paint the picture of a successful client. Just I always think it's nice to showcase what's possible, and especially when we're doing interviews like this, we're talking about how it could be, and it's a bit abstract, but giving, I think, an example is always so inspirational to help people see what's possible for them. So I'd love if you had any success stories you wanted to share.
well, I mean, a success story that's super close to me is my wife. She's a nurse practitioner. So she, got into this business and I'm really more hands off on that. Like she really kind of runs the show over there and I just help a little bit here and there where needed because she's just got such a good handle on things. But yeah, she was working as a nurse practitioner and she just really, we had three kids and she's like, I really want to have flexibility and freedom because I was working full time too. And, we love to vacation and we love to do things like that. So it was really kind of her schedule, working long days in the clinic was kind of getting in the way of what we wanted to do with our life, right? Of course, she still wanted to work, but she wanted the flexibility and freedom. So she was super scared to go out on her own. And I never like really wanted to push her, but I just encourage her if that's what she wanted to do. And long story short, yeah, she's done it. She's done awesome. And so she's been a great success in my mind as a nurse practitioner, going out and doing her own thing. There's another nurse practitioner that we worked with in Texas. She wanted to do this, and she actually went really specialty focused and just NAD for addiction.
Mm.
Um, and so she just put all her focus in that. And that's what we really work with people too, is like, find a niche and just kind of focus on, even if you offer general wellness and whatever. But so she focused on just NAD for addiction, and has several people on her staff now and is just doing, a lot of money. The revenue is really, really high every month. The average addiction patient that she sees is probably ten to $15,000 in a really short span. So it's higher, ticket items, but really is and I'll I'll ask if it's okay if I share her information with you, so people can go and check her out, what she's doing. But really, she's been at it for about 2 years now.
That's
Really
amazing.
super focused with addiction and NAD plus, and just has done amazing. So
That's so cool. Yeah, no, those are exactly the types of stories that I think are so helpful to hear because, of course, people can have those ideas on their own. But sometimes hearing someone having that success in Texas and, okay, I'm in, Connecticut, maybe I can take that story as
right.
inspiration to do something where I am to serve that same community. So that's really wonderful. Um,
Mhm.
as we wrap up, I'd love for you to share, someone who wants more information about starting an IV therapy business, like where can they find you? Where can they find your resources? We'll of course include everything under the video as well.
Yeah, it's Ivy Drip Launch. We have a lot of free content out there too. YouTube's just free trainings and things like that. So if you're interested in the business, I say just do your research. Look at where you're at. What's the competition like in your area? Are you seeing a demand for it? And I also say that if there is competition in the area, that's a good thing. So that means that there is demand for it if it looks like they're doing well. But maybe look at your competition and see what they're not offering and this and that. But I think the first and foremost, if you want to get into this business, I feel like you need to the first step is to just commit to yourself that I'm going to do this. That's going to be the first step because once you actually commit to it and start, taking action steps to opening your own practice, that's the only way it's ever going to happen. So, commit to it and just kind of go all in. So there's so many different ways to do it, and that's where, our program really is designed to walk people through step by step from literally choosing your business name to opening your clinic and then growing. So all the legality, making sure you're compliant, making sure you're paired with a good medical director, things like that. And then once you're open, how to actually grow your practice. So, and then of course, all the clinical training that you're going to need. So, but I think the biggest value that we bring is actually just giving that, working with people that are they're scared to start, they're nervous, and we really work with them and just try to just take all the stress and overwhelm out of opening this business because there is a lot. It's not rocket science to open this business, but there's a lot of steps, right? And it can be overwhelming. um, and that's what we're here for, just to
Awesome.
simplify that and make it as stress free as possible.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ben. I will make sure that we include all information and links for IV Drip Launch beneath this video. If you're watching the video, would love to hear if this is something that you're interested in. Maybe you're already doing IV therapy. Maybe it's something you want to add. Hopefully you've been inspired, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, thanks for having me.